I spent a lot of my time on stage going, thank you.
Look at that, you point and there's coffee.
That's star power. That's because I'm a rock god. Rock god's coffee. Thank you, miss.
We should get someone to blow on it for you.
It's so cool.
You're not going to blow on that yourself, are you?
Somebody got to blow this? You made me say that.
David Bowie's career has encompassed the realms of music, art, film, and the internet. He has made a career of continually reinventing himself. His influence on 3 decades of music is undeniable. He has come to symbolize modern rock as a format in which literacy, art, fashion, sexual exploration, and social commentary can be rolled into one. While in Toronto with the Area 2 Festival, we sat him down to help tell the story of David Bowie.
There was a line in the bio that kind of made me laugh.
Oh, a lot of the bio made me laugh.
It talked about how at this stage you're continually reinventing yourself at such a breakneck pace.
Oh, I don't know what that means. Do you have any idea what that means?
I kind of do, but the odd thing is, you were doing that 30 years ago. They're making it sound like this is a new thing.
Well, you know, I'm not quite comfortable with that way of putting things. I think what it really is, I mean, the subject matter that I write about, I feel is fairly consistent. It has been over the years. It's always about the same thing. It's a kind of a separateness, isolation, a sense of anguish. Oh, no, not again. So there's some fear in there. A little bit of misery. The Miserables. Really, isolation, I guess, sums it up. And that's been really consistent for 30, 35 years. It's just that my way of approaching it changes virtually from year to year. I just try and approach probably the same questions in a different way each time.
I don't know why, but ever since I was really young, I thought I'd never have a problem making money, whatever I did. So really, it was a choice of what was I going to do for it, and I just had a passionate affair with music. It was a very amorous affair with music.
This is Major Tom to ground control. I'm stepping through the door.
David Bowie was born David Robert Hayward Jones in Brixton, England, January 8, 1947. He released some singles in the mid-60s as David Jones, both as a member of numerous bands and a solo artist with little success. By 1966, another Davy Jones of the Monkees had beaten him to stardom, forcing a name change.
Yeah, it was David Jones and then the other lot came up. I tell you what, you won't follow that one up. Before then, I had one week where I was Tom Jones. Do you believe that? I still got the photographs to prove it.
Is it true that the London debut, people booed in '69, I guess?
Oh, yeah. I was booed frequently, but usually it came in concert with cigarette butts being thrown at me as well.
That predated spitting, I guess.
Yeah, it was the equivalent. But I seemed to do an awful lot of the wrong gigs with the wrong crowd at that time. It took me a few years to get that right. It got right when I made my own crowd.
David Bowie's self-titled debut was released in 1967, with his breakthrough coming 2 years later, 1969, Space Oddity.
I rushed into my curiosities as a human being that a lot of them were kind of, I guess, considered taboos. There were things that most people would leave alone and not bother with and not really want to investigate because it might be a bit... The results of investigating them might be quite dodgy.
1972, that's when you told Melody Maker, I am gay, and I have always been gay.
That's right.
Because you said that was the most provocative thing to say at that time.
Well, it was. And, of course, it was true at the time. I mean, I was really pushing myself into every situation that I could, and
bisexuality was definitely one of the greatest taboos at the time, so therefore it was something that I really wanted to know more about.
The early 70s would prove to be Bowie's most prolific and innovative period. Between 1970 and 1973, he would release 5 groundbreaking albums, with 1972 marking the debut of his influential Ziggy Stardust character. Ziggy was an image that would become an androgynous sex symbol. The songs had the pop simplicity of glam, hook-filled mass appeal, but lyrical depth that worked across the whole spectrum of modern music. Bowie had positioned himself as the linchpin of the glam revolution, bringing glam to millions and giving it artistic credibility and a solid image.
The characters throughout the years, as much as you've tried to get away with them, people like me will always bring them up.
I know, damn you.
They're so
damn all of you.
They're so firmly embedded in pop culture.
They were quite good, some of them were quite iconic. I think really, you know, when I started I was deathly shy about performing, and for me the characterization of something seemed to give me a way of interpreting the songs without having to kind of, you know, be out there nakedly myself. But Ziggy was sort of half-baked, but he probably should have been a musical. And that's where I was going with it. But of course, needless to say, 6 months out on the road, I was fed up with the damn thing and wanted to move on to, you know, Christ, what if I could be bloody Ziggy for the rest of my life? You know, it's costing me a fortune in a hair dye.
The audience reaction was just unbelievable for the Ziggy shows. I mean, we had a good audience reaction in Europe. In fact, probably the Ziggy thing started there first, but it certainly was taken over, engulfed by the reaction in America.
As a 14-year-old kid, you saw that for the first time. It was so different to anything else, and he wasn't scared to just try to do something really outrageously different and be himself, but at the same time they were fantastic songs.
The thing that got me about Bowie, I was 12 when I heard Starman, it was the fact that he frightened parents, but he wasn't frightening. It wasn't like Alice Cooper, who really did put her shits on people. You know, Bowie was just this like, my God, he's wearing makeup. And I found it fascinating that he was such a threat to people over 35.
I think it was very playful in the beginning. It was playful and it was camp and it was just over the top with Ziggy.
I used to be able to stop traffic quite easily by just walking down the street. No more than that, just because I had long hair.
For the longest time, you dealt in illusion on the stage in the form of characters, and for the longest time as well, the audience had a hard time separating the artist from his creations. And I think it can be said in the 70s as well that you had that problem.
This could be said. I hoped that it had been put to rest in 1976, but it did follow me around for a long time.
What freedom did it ultimately give you to just be David Bowie on stage and not a character?
I felt that it did a lot better for my off-stage life to not carry a character around, because I would get very method about it in the earlier days, and I would carry the character through to my everyday life. One can be tempted to glide along, you know, which is not a good thing. You know, I had a very bad 80s. Actually, I think everybody had a very bad 80s, didn't they? I particularly did, specifically from around 84 through till late 88. Those 4 years, in fact. Which is, actually, looking back on my career, I was pretty lucky. I mean, that wasn't so bad. I know artists that have been through much rougher periods. I lost all confidence in what I was doing, and I hated what I was doing, actually. Quite quietly to myself. I didn't tell anybody else around me that I didn't think I was doing very good work. Specifically because it was selling really well, which is really embarrassing, you know, when the best things that would be like these, you know, albums that you don't really think much of,
incredibly big sellers, and it's like, oh, Christ.
Adapting to the idea of being kind of mainstream I found very difficult indeed. But looking at it in a fairly sober light, I felt that I could deal with it, you know, and I just couldn't. I was so beat by it, the whole three-ring circus thing about it, and trying to reach a wider and wider audience, you know, without any kind of feelings of artistic passion at all. I didn't really believe in the material I was doing, and indeed some of it was very good material, but I just had lost the belief in myself as a creative artist. And I got introduced to Reeves Gabrels as a guitar player and just a good guy that I met. And he just very simply said, you've just got to stop doing this, you know, there's no way out. Just stop doing it. Do what you like doing. I said, but you don't understand. He said, yes, I do understand. I've read all the books. and that was it, really, and I just stopped doing it, you know, and I formed Tin Machine with the really quite clumsy idea that I could just disappear into a band anonymously.
I found my exit from all that mainstream stuff through Tin Machine. I mean, that was my sort of my holy grail at the time. It was, this is the truth.
I don't find it very exciting anymore, generally. I think it's got to get a lot more dangerous again. We're working on it.
David Bowie put his solo career on hold in 1989 to form Tin Machine. The band featured Reeves Gabrels on guitar and the sibling rhythm section of Tony and Hunt Sales. The band allowed Bowie the opportunity to return to his roots, touring small clubs and collaborating in what he asserted was a truly democratic creative partnership. They would release 2 studio albums in 1989 and 91.
It wasn't until kind of 88, meeting Reeves Gabrels and forming Tin Machine, that I really felt that I was back on course, and things generally started to get back into sync in late 80s, 90s, and I felt excited again, you know. It was a very freeing experience. We'd started writing in a way that that was so reminiscent of the way that I used to write. It was very spontaneous, none of it was pre-written, the stuff was vibrant and exciting.
It actually worked for me as a vehicle for getting back to my own personal standards of writing and producing and all that. So I think it was one of the better things that I did. And to follow through from that, I've actually liked an awful lot of what I've done in the 90s. I'm really proud of that work. There's some very good work in the 90s. But I do start off with a clean slate every time. I really try and think, what is it I think now? What is it? Where am I going? Philosophically, how am I looking at my life and the lives of others and how we live our life? That's kind of where I go from each time, I think.
I kind of added on to this canon of things that I've developed that I like to harness their energies and the ideas from those things. Everything for me, from early rock, then through rhythm and blues, through early electronica, all those things I keep drawing upon.
After 93's sophisticated and soulful Black Tie White Noise, he would reunite with Brian Eno for 95's industrial techno-influenced Outside, a return to concept records featuring characters.
I'm so thankful that we're strangers when we meet.
When I was doing the characters in the early 70s, I think it was some problem for me about whether they were stage characters or recreating aspects of my life and taking it on stage, or whether the thing was evolving on stage and I was then pulling it back into real life. Now I think what I'm doing probably to protect my own sanity is that, in a way, it's a precaution, I guess. Instead of inventing just one character, I've invented about 7 or 8, and I think it enables me to retain the guise of an author, but at least I don't identify it. The album is about atmosphere. It's about the sound of 1995.
In 1997, Bowie would push himself further into the post-grunge industrial world with the jungle-influenced Earthling.
Since the early 90s, I was really impressed by what was happening in London with this new music at that time called jungle. And I touched on it on the Outside album on a couple of tracks. And I wanted to kind of create a hybrid with jungle and rock.
When the album first came out, there was a big hype surrounding the record as, you know, Bowie's now dabbling in drum and bass and techno.
Dabbling.
Dabbling. It's techno influence. There's a great mix of the organic sounding guitars of Reeves.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what we're doing, what we're still doing, is really unlike anybody else. It's certainly influenced by dance vocabulary, and we would be the first to admit that, but we like that kind of, particularly the drum beat side of it, very much indeed. But I think what we're doing, the hybrid that we've created, is, I feel, a very positive direction for us to go as a band. And really, there's virtually nobody else doing it. Being 50, I want to see what you can do as a rock artist at 50. And everybody else can do what they want to do, but I know what I want to do, and I've got the chance of doing it. It's extraordinarily exciting for me because I honestly don't know what's going to happen, because I really feel that if I had to lay back on what I've done before, I'd much prefer to stop. But while I'm still wildly excited about what I do as a musician, then that's the course that I choose to take.
What is it that attracts you about jungle, apart from the fact that it's the latest thing?
Because I always love the latest dance. I mean, my approach is really quite consistent. I don't know why people think that I change all the time. I actually don't, you know. I do the same thing. I really do. I mean, I tend to, whatever it is, I kind of tend to stew it in this kind of vaudevillian-based English idea of pop music. It's rock meets pop, it's soul meets pop, it's in all its Dickie Pride tackiness.
Hello, Mum, I'm 50.
You still got a funny haircut.
On January 9th, 1997, at New York City's Madison Square Garden, a tribute benefit concert took place to commemorate the 50th birthday of David Bowie. Special guests included Lou Reed, Robert Smith, Sonic Youth, Foo Fighters, Billy Corgan, and more.
You take a band like Sonic Youth, I mean, he was doing atonal stuff in 1980. You know, you take The Cure, and he was doing kind of glammy pop in 72. You take me, I mean, pick your era.
I'm enjoying it so much. I'm going to do this every year. I'm going to be 50 from this point onwards. I haven't lost one iota of enthusiasm for life. I'm extremely lucky that way. I really am. It really is a blessing.
As I get older, I get more and more selfish about what it is that I want to do that I find satisfying. And it's definitely how one should spend one's life, is because, you know, if you make yourself happy, a little bit of that sunshine can spread onto others.